Hey folks, thank you for tuning in to check out the video. I appreciate it. This is the third and final part of the Japanese table build, and we'll get started and we'll knock it out. The tabletop that I've made, I'll show you all in just a minute, but it's just a basic gluing up some ash boards together. There's a hairline crack in the top that I want to just secure with a bow tie, and so I'm using this Rockler bow tie jig kit that they sell, and it is awesome. You know what? If I was maybe a better woodworker, I would do my bow ties by hand. But I find that this kit is really efficient and fast, and it makes a really nice, crisp, clean, I think really beautiful bow tie. And it's just a lot easier and simpler and faster than doing them by hand. So that's why I use it. The kit comes with these acrylic templates, and you can get different templates for different design or style bow ties, whichever ones you like. And then it basically comes with a guide bushing for your router, and there is like a little brass collar that fits onto the bushing. And so in this stage, the first thing I do is I got to cut out the bow tie key, and I use the template, and I put the collar onto the bushing, and it just helps to get the proper spacing. And essentially I just ride it along the edge of the template, just making sure I'm keeping consistent contact with the template, because I'm cutting the outside to cut the bow tie out of this workpiece. So I want to make sure I don't go inside the lines and mess it up. So I've got to be very careful to hold it up against the template as I'm moving along. And after I've routed to the proper depth, I can remove the router. The template is held on just with double-sided tape. It pops right off and good to go. So after using the bandsaw to cut out the bow tie keys from the stock, the next step is I need to create the mortise in the tabletop that the key will then fit into. So it's really pretty easy. I just use the same template that I used to cut the key. I just used some double-sided tape, and I positioned on the workpiece where I want it to be, stick it down. That tape is super secure. It does a great job. And then the only difference is I remove the collar, this little kind of brass collar that goes around the bushing. I take that off, and then all I got to do is just route out the inside of this template. Whereas with the key, you're just going along the perimeter. This one, you're hogging out all the material in the middle. So it's really just like coloring in between the lines. And so I just route it out, lower it a little bit, route it out, lower it a little bit, till I get the right depth that I'm looking for. And this kit is so great because it just makes this perfectly sized hole that the bow tie keys fit into. And so after I've got the key and the mortise, then I just put a little glue in the inside, a little glue on the key, and just hammer that sucker home. So the bottom bow tie that you can see is holding together this hairline crack. It doesn't go all the way through the table, but I thought it'd be good just to help keep it secure over time. The top one, there isn't a crack there, but there's this small knot hole that most of the wood was really clear, didn't have many defects, but there was this one knot hole that I was trying to hide. And normally I would use epoxy or something like that to fill it, but I thought that might be distracting just to have this one isolated piece of epoxy. So I thought maybe using a bow tie would be a good way to hide that knot hole and make it kind of blend in and look more intentional. And if you're watching this and wondering to yourself, gee, he's kind of using a lot of glue, the answer is yes. Yes, I always use way too much glue. I'm just kind of OCD like that. I just always overglue it. So yes, there's probably more glue than I need here. So I cut the bow tie keys so they were a little bit proud of the tabletop. So the next thing was just to sand them so they were flush with the surface. This sander, it's a Bosch. I think it's called the GET75. And it's essentially Bosch's version of the Rotex. That, it has, unlike a normal orbital sander, it has this kind of direct drive. They call it their turbo mode, where it's basically like a belt sander and an orbital sander had a baby, and that's what this thing does, and it is amazing. It's probably one of the best investments I've made in my shop, and so it's really powerful and just helps to kind of sand everything down nice and flush. Okay, so now that the top is pretty much done, the base is pretty much done, we need a way to join them together. And I was really wrestling with how to do this because the traditional methods I would use, whether they were like brackets or figure-8 fasteners or screws, anything like that, they would be visible. And I really liked the way that this table, the design had it looking very kind of open and floating and very clean. And I didn't want you to look under the table and be able to see hardware or fasteners. So my dad had a really good idea on how we can do it. And so if you're wondering what these little black circle things are, they are magnets. And they're really strong magnets that I found online. And the basic idea is we'll recess holes in the base and in the underside of the table. We'll mount magnets in those holes. We will line them up so that they will, mate with each other and, land one on top of the other. And they will give you a strong enough connection that it will hold the top down. But if you need to remove the top, that you can break that connection and take the top off. And also, with seasonal expansion contraction, it'll allow the table base to move and won't like hold it down fast like you would if you use screws or lag bolts. So basically just had to recess those holes, and took a little bit of figuring just to make sure that they lined up with each other. We weren't really sure if it was going to work or not. I haven't seen it done before, and I thought it was a pretty innovative idea that my dad had. But I'll show you in a minute, but it worked out great. So I'm a woodworker, and you are currently watching a video on YouTube. So naturally, I'm going to finish this table with Rubio Monocoat because it's the thing to do. And all jokes aside, it really is an awesome product. It looks beautiful. It has a really nice natural feel to it, and it has really decent protection. Not as good as like a polyurethane or anything, but I think it looks and feels a lot better than a film finish like this would. So just like you've seen a million times before, just kind of wipe it all on, make sure it wipe it around, move it around so it soaks into the grain. Use this white Scotch-Brite pad to buff it into the wood, and then wipe off the excess with shop towels so it's nice and clean, and that's pretty much it. Applying the Rubio to the base was a little bit more of a pain. It just had all these little nooks and crannies and sharp corners. It was hard just to work it in there and make sure I didn't miss a spot, but in the end it worked out great, and I was really liking the way this Rubio was working out. I've used it before, and this is their Rubio Pure. It's just basically their natural untinted variety. But I'd never used ash before. This is my first time using ash lumber, and I thought it was really cool looking. It had just such a real golden amber look to it, and the grain was just really pronounced and strong, and I was just really happy with the way it was turning out. Installing these magnets was really pretty easy. really the biggest challenge was making sure that the magnets in the top and the magnets in the base lined up together. You know, if you didn't line them up right and they were offset from each other, the strength of the magnet wouldn't be as strong. And likewise, you drill in those holes, I just used a Forstner bit, but I had to be careful not to drill too deep, because if I recessed them in too deep, then there would be a gap, a space in between the two magnets when they met, and the connection wouldn't be as strong. So that was really just the biggest challenge, just the placing and the depth of those magnets. Other than that, they had a countersunk hole in the middle and just kind of drilled a screw down into the base and the top, and that was it. All right, and then now it is time for the moment of truth. So I was a little nervous about these magnets. I thought the idea was sound, but I wasn't sure how it would work in practice. But I'll show you in this next shot. My dad and I are doing a dramatic reenactment of attaching the top. But it was really strong. You know, all you had to do was just make sure the magnets lined up. So once you put the top down, you had to kind of wiggle it around till you felt them, bite and grab onto each other. But once they locked on, the connection was really pretty strong, and you could lift it up and down no problem. If you wanted to remove the tabletop, all you had to do was give it just, like a nudge laterally left to right. Just a, sharp enough push to kind of break that connection. Once you did, it would lift right off. And that's it, guys. That is the end of the table, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in to check it out. I just got a couple shots here at the end showing what it looks like, but thank y'all.